The first time I met Kanye in the studio, everything looked normal. You know, the type, cables snaking across the floor, monitors buzzing faintly, the smell of burnt coffee baked into the walls. But there was one detail. The silence was never complete. Even when the speakers were off, a faint hum lingered in my ears. At first, I blamed exhaustion. But then I realized the sound wasn't in my head. It was buried in the walls, like a breath trapped inside the concrete. Kanye sat at the desk, staring into nothing. A pen rested in his hand, but the notebook remained blank. Then he whispered, "Do you hear it? Do you hear it? Everyone hears the music. But have you ever heard the echo?" A chill ran down my spine. "What echo?" I asked. His eyes met mine, blank yet burning. "The echo behind the crack. You can't silence that voice." In that instant, I knew this wasn't just a studio. Something lived behind the walls, and we were listening to its echoes. The next day, when I returned to the studio, the hum in the walls was sharper, louder, like it had grown overnight, and now demanded to be heard. Kanye wasn't at the desk this time. He stood in the middle of the room, holding his notebook. The pages seemed to flutter on their own. "Look," he said, turning one toward me. The handwriting was erratic, letters spilling past the lines, rushed and uneven. But here's the thing. Kanye's pen was still in the air. "I didn't write this," he whispered. But the notebook won't stay silent. On the page, words appeared. "The echo cannot be silenced. It only multiplies." My chest tightened. "Who's writing this?" I asked. His eyes flickered with a dark glow. "The ones behind the wall. We're just the carriers." The studio lights flickered. Nothing played from the speakers, yet the room filled with resonance. It was like standing in an empty concert hall, except there was no music, only echo. The farther I backed away, the closer Kanye leaned into the notebook. "They're promising me something," he said. "An echo that makes me immortal. You'll hear it too." In that moment, the studio no longer felt like a room. It felt like a cavern, and the echoes inside the concrete were slowly bending reality itself. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the notebook. Words had written themselves, and no logic could explain it. Still, I couldn't stop myself from returning to the studio the next day. The moment I stepped in, the air felt different. Silence didn't exist anymore. The hum in the walls had deepened, heavier than before. Kanye wasn't at the mic. He sat facing the corner of the wall, eyes half shut, lips moving. When I got closer, I saw it, a crack on the concrete, thin but real. From within it, a dark vibration seeped out, as if behind the wall wasn't another room, but another world. Without opening his eyes, Kanye spoke. "Do you hear it? This isn't music anymore. This is the sound of the crack." His words echoed through the studio. The speakers were off, yet his voice multiplied, bouncing like waves. I stepped back. Around the crack, shadows stirred. They looked like human figures, but their faces were blank, just emptiness. My heart raced. I wanted to run, but Kanye turned toward me, smiling faintly. "There's no going back," he said. "Once you've heard the echo, silence will never exist again." The crack in the studio wall was no longer just a flaw. Each day it widened, and the hum seeping from it carved itself into my ears. Sometimes it was a murmur, other times it multiplied like a crowd whispering in unison. Kanye sat in front of the crack with his notebook. Pages filled themselves with spirals, vibration waves, faceless figures. "These aren't dictated to me," he said. "I'm just copying them." That's when I realized he wasn't just an artist anymore. He was a conduit. Something beyond the crack was using his pen, his voice, his body. One night, while playing back a recording, the monitor behaved differently. Instead of sound waves, images flickered across the screen. Silhouettes moved inside the waves. One leaned forward, closer and closer, as if it could break through the glass. I spun around, but the room was empty. Still, the hum was so loud it drowned out my heartbeat. Kanye turned to me, his eyes bloodshot. "They're not listening to us anymore," he said. "We're listening to them." I froze. Whatever lived beyond that crack wasn't just echoing back, it was pulling us inside. Each day in the studio, the sound from the crack grew stronger, but it wasn't just in the walls anymore. I began to see its echo in mirrors, in windows, even in the dark reflection of the monitors. One night I caught sight of myself in the large round mirror backstage. At first it was just my reflection until I noticed my lips weren't moving, but the reflection was whispering. I couldn't hear it, but I knew exactly what it said. "It's coming." I turned and saw Kanye. He looked exhausted, yet his eyes carried a strange gleam. "They're not just sound anymore," he said. "They've reached the reflections." He opened his notebook. This time the pages weren't filled with words, but faces. My face, his face, but the eyes were hollow pitch black. My breath caught. The reflection stared back at me. Even when I looked away, it no longer obeyed me, it was watching on its own. Closing the notebook, Kanye whispered, "Echoes don't stay in sound. They spill into reflections." That's when I realized it wasn't trapped in the walls anymore. It was leaking into every surface of reality. After the reflections started following me, I felt eyes in every corner of the studio. No matter how quiet I tried to be, something always slipped between my breaths. One night, while reviewing the recordings, a faint hiss rose from the speakers. The track was blank, no sound had been recorded. But hidden in the silence was something else, a void, and that void was louder than sound. I put on the headphones. At first, nothing. Then an echo, as if the darkness itself had started speaking. "The void sees you." I looked up and saw Kanye staring at me. His eyes glowed red, though the room's lights weren't. "They're no longer hiding in silence," he said. "They've become silence itself." He opened the notebook. This time the pages weren't filled with words, but with black stains. Ink hadn't spilled, darkness had. From the edges of the paper, a smoky shadow bled into the room. I backed away, but the sound of the void only grew louder in my ears. No matter where I moved, I couldn't escape it. That's when I realized echoes, reflections, now even silence. Every piece of reality was turning into a doorway, and behind every doorway waited the same thing, a shadow, eager for us. The crack in the studio wall had nearly consumed the entire surface. Chunks of concrete fell, wires shook loose. But the real horror was what appeared beyond the crack. One night, when the lights flickered out, the inside of the crack glowed. Beyond it was an inverted stage. Spotlights beamed into the void, shining on an audience that wasn't there. And in the center stood a reflection of Kanye, but it wasn't him. Its eyes were pitch black, hands raised and trembling. "That's not me," whispered the real Kanye beside me. "But it looks more like me than I do." The words chilled me, because the figure inside the crack moved its lips in perfect sync with him. Two voices, one from this world, one from beyond, speaking as one. I stepped back, but a low hum poured out of the crack. It grew louder, shaking the walls until the ceiling lights shattered. The reflection turned its gaze on me and whispered, "You belong here too." For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. It felt like the stage inside the crack was summoning me. Walking through the night streets of Los Angeles, every step felt like I was crushing broken glass instead of pavement. The city lights were bright, but to me they looked dark. Kanye was beside me, silent, lost in thought. After the concert, the crowd's screams still echoed in our ears, but deep inside there was only unease. As we passed an old building, a faded poster caught my eye, torn, weathered. But the face was still clear, Kanye in his younger years. Below it, in bold letters, one chilling phrase, "Not yours?" My stomach tightened. Who was it addressing? Kanye? Or me? That's when I noticed his expression shift. His eyes were locked on the poster, his lips moving without sound. I caught it only by reading them. They're still watching me. A gust of wind ripped the last shreds of the poster, scattering them into the air. But as the fragments fluttered down, they seemed to align into one word, control. Suddenly, Kanye began to walk faster, like something unseen was pulling him forward. As I followed, one question echoed in my chest. In this story, which one of us was truly lost? Kanye or me? It was well past midnight when we returned to the studio. Everyone else was gone, leaving behind only a humming silence. But in that silence I could swear someone was whispering behind the walls. Kanye dropped into a chair, the notebook still in his hands. But this time the pages weren't empty. Words were appearing on their own. Ink flowed as if guided by an invisible hand, curling into letters, forming the phrase, "Forever with me." My heart raced. "Are you writing this?" I asked. His face was hidden in shadow. "No," he said. "But the pen is in my hand." He lifted it, and sure enough, the pen was between his fingers, yet it was moving on its own, scribbling frantically. Suddenly the power cut out. The only light in the room came from the notebook, glowing faintly as the words scrawled faster, bursting with energy. No escape. I reached to slam it shut, but the moment my fingers touched the cover, a cold surge shot through me. It felt like the writing wasn't just on paper, it was etching itself into me. The notebook refused to close. I tried to force it shut, but the cover slipped from my grip and the pages flipped on their own. Each page turned with a whisper, and those whispers filled the room. The sound wasn't behind the walls anymore. It was inside us. Kanye stood up. His face was expressionless, eyes hollow. But in the mirror, his reflection smiled. Its lips moved, whispering, "You finally arrived." Suddenly, the studio wall collapsed entirely. Behind it stood a massive stage. Spotlights blazed, but the audience seats stretched into infinity empty. The only sound echoing through that void was applause. Kanye's body walked toward the stage. I tried to stop him, but the moment I stepped forward, my knees buckled. The applause wasn't just in my ears, it pounded against my chest. A force pushed me back, then the notebook fell at my feet. The cover finally shut, but across it new words appeared. Your turn. I was alone in the dark, and that's when I realized this was never Kanye's story. It never had been. From the very beginning, the pages had been writing me.